This is Carl Polachuk, and you're listening to the SMB Community Podcast, produced by and for the Small Biz Thoughts community. We're dedicated to making every IT professional a successful IT professional. Hi, this is Carl, and my very special guest today is my friend Mark Smith. Welcome back.
Hey, thank you, Carl. Good to be here.
So Mark is, I guess probably one of the most famous people that you haven't heard his name before. Mark founded the Windows NT magazine back in the day. So, and that you've come a long way since then. You've had some really good gigs, including the time that you've been with ChannelPro a while now.
That's right. Yep. Doing some business development. Yep.
Very cool. So our big topic is IoT today. And before you tune out, I just want to encourage you that the one singular goal I have for this podcast is to help you, the IT service provider, figure out how to make money with IoT. So if we can get just a couple of nuggets in that direction, it would be a great thing. So in the meantime, Mark, why don't you tell us a little about who you are and how you got here?
Yeah. So I got here not the normal route. Okay. So, in my background, I went from IT guy to founder of Windows NT magazine. And that transition, I had to learn a lot about marketing and business and whatnot. And because that magazine did so well over the 5 years, and it actually sold for $100 million, it got me into the magazine M&A world, where I met the owner of EH Publishing and became a friend of mine. And he invited me in to help him with all of his magazines. He had 12 of them, one of which is ChannelPro. Now, most of the time I can do my thing and create a digital marketing agency internally for the company, and I'm behind the scenes. But with ChannelPro being IT, I thought, hey, why don't I get in front of the camera, so to speak, right? So one of my first gigs actually was with you, right? We did Managed Services in a Month class, and then we did the Cloud 5 master class, and I think I introduced you to funnels and all this good stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, that I've learned, over the last several years. So I'm going to all the ChannelPro shows like everybody else, and I see this guy on stage, Luis Alvarez, talking about his cannabis business, and I follow up with Luis. Say, hey, I got to know more about this deal. And about, right as we're about ready to wrap up the conversation, he goes, by the way, I think I've almost doubled my managed service revenue by adding an IoT managed service. And I went, wait, what did you just say? Okay, that's a first, because up till now, we've been seeing the IoT presentations that are very academic, right? Blah, blah, blah. IoT is going to be big, yada, yada, yada. And you're like, okay, heard that, been there. This guy had a practical. So anyway, I did a follow-up call with him. He explained his whole service, and I was blown away. And I thought, hey, would you be willing to do a webinar and a class together? So that's what we did. We did this webinar and class. It was a beta thing, like you and I started off. And 26 people went through there, and he literally broke down the exact managed service that he added. And the breakthrough really for Lewis, and it was just by accident, one of his clients, really asked him to look to solve this Wi-Fi problem for a senior center. And, he was using his normal tools like ConnectWise Automate. It runs across the whole network. It finds the PCs fine and servers and firewalls and whatnot. And then it gets to the other stuff. And the other stuff shows up as a big question mark. There's an IP address. What is that thing? I don't know.
Right.
So he has another tool that he found, OnVIF, and he ran it on there, and it diagrammed all the devices. And he kept asking the client, wait, what's that? Who's managing your surveillance cameras? Don't know. Who's managing your access control, physical access control? No idea. Who's managing this? And after 5 I don't knows, they said, well, do you do that? He said, sure, even though.
Yeah, I do now.
Well, how much? He said, $480 a month. Done. Okay. And so then he thought, well, I'm going to start running this OnVIF thing, this network diagram on all of his clients and do the same thing. And sure enough, here's the first thing they noticed. None, except for one client, had never seen their entire network diagrammed, ever. The one client that did was a big client, a major hospital, and they were using HP OpenView.
Right.
And we're talking some serious buckos for that tool.
Right.
And when he said, hey, I'll charge $480 a month, they was like, wait a second, you're going to give me, you'll manage the service cheaper than my monthly fees just for the software alone. So like, all right, they dumped OpenView. Well, I introduced him to another tool about 6 months ago called Domotes. Okay. And that tool, he started running and he saw the demo and he saw immediately 2 new services he could add because of it. No, I mean, like I saw the same demo as he did, but he noticed, he said, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money off of that. I go, what? And he said, well, this thing can do real-time alerts of new devices coming on a network. And banks are required to do this. And he's very much into the banking regulations,
right.
FDIC, all that stuff. So he put that out there and they said, well, how much, you have this regulation. I can help you comply with that and deal with the real-time alerts. They said, oh, so he threw out the number $12.50 a month. Absolutely. They all signed up. And so he's paying Domotes $19 a month, charging the client $12.50 a month. Not a bad gig, right?
That is not bad margin.
And the cool thing is the Domotes has this native app. So his techs literally can pull out their phone. It's all optimized for their smartphone. Hey, this banking client got a real-time alert. Do you want to let this thing on? He can call the client. Hey, I noticed there's a new laptop coming in your boardroom. Yeah, that's our auditor. They're cool. On. Or they could say no, off. That's it.
And it blocks the traffic to that?
Yeah, it won't allow them to connect. Okay. But then he noticed something else, and this is because of his cannabis clients, where he had 300. So he had this client, and he was asked to bid on a cannabis client for 300 cameras, because in California, the regulations say every single square inch of that facility from seed to sale must be covered by a camera on 24/7. You have to have something like 90 days of video available to an auditor at any moment.
Wow.
But it's not good enough just to say the camera's on or off. You have to prove every single day that the cameras not only are on, but pointed in the right direction, and you have complete coverage. Well, he had figured out, like with OnVIF, yeah, the camera's on or off, but that wasn't good enough for the auditors. Now, Domotes supports this little protocol called OnVIF, which supports 400 different cameras. So he literally, while he was on the demo, he looks up, oh, please, I hope my cameras, Dawa, these Chinese cameras, support OnVIF. He looks it up, OnVIF. Yes, I just made $1 million. And I go, during the demo, and you're like, how? We're all asking, how'd you do it? Because I'm going to charge a managed service for this, like literally managed, because this goes beyond monitoring alert. He can literally go in there and manage the cameras, literally control their direction, take snapshots of the video or the thing. He can update the firmware, the whole 9 yards, without even looking at the manufacturer's, user interface. Right. Straight through Domotes. And he's paying them $19 a month. And he charges the client. They're happy to pay $2,400 a month for that service. So anyway, we cover all that in this class that you can get to with freeiotclass.com. It's all in there. And he breaks down all the stuff, the numbers, and the whole 9 yards.
So it's freeiotclass.com. All right.
Yep.
Put that in the show notes.
Yep. So really, it's through Lewis and talking to him and doing this webinar together that I thought, you know what? Some people would sign up for the class and some people wouldn't. I said, why? Well, Lewis, he's a very successful MSSP in Salinas. Maybe he's a unicorn, right? He's the only guy making money on IoT. And he kind of threw the gauntlet down. And I thought, you know what? Carl does a podcast. It's pretty dang good. I'm going to do my own podcast. Now, I knew nothing about doing a podcast, but anyway, I thought if I could share stories every single week of people like Lewis making money with IoT managed services, then wouldn't that be cool? So that's
Right.
what it's all about. Every single week, I put somebody new on that is making money, and sometimes significant money. Like, of course, we had Lewis on there, but then we had this other guy who just closed a $12 million deal with a 28, a K through 12 school district who wanted video cameras and AI and basically that were regulation in in that space which came down from higher ed, and what it's called is the one button panic deal. Basically, if intruder comes or anything happens,
Right.
one button and everything that can communicate, even the clocks on the walls, have to all be tied together and say, hey, bad guy or whatever, active
Right.
shooter, everybody's notified all at once. Well, that's a lot of networking and stuff like that. That really requires an IT thing. And there are these platforms that do all that. And now they're even requiring these schools to put in surveillance cameras with AI to recognize that student's cool, that
Right.
teacher's cool, that staff's cool, anybody else is not cool, and do it in a secure way so they don't violate the privacy of the kids, right? So it's an IT problem, okay? It's
Exactly.
beyond the normal realm of physical security
So are
vendors.
these guys normal MSPs in the sense of like this? Would this be somebody that I would meet at a ChannelPro event?
Okay,
MSP event?
yes and no, okay? So this particular guy did not come from the normal IT realm. He came out of the telecom world, this guy that won that deal. And so the telecom guys are really picking up on this IoT thing. And they have a different sort of channel arrangement, where our typical guys might go to a distributor like Cynix and, Tech
Right.
Data and Ingram. These guys went through master agent network,
Right.
which is kind of a new thing for me. I'm learning about what that is. But the master agents, they might have a deal with Sprint, and Sprint will buy massive amounts of these IoT sort of plug and play type solutions. So these telecom guys, I would say, are better at sales than our typical ChannelPro guy,
Right.
but way less technical. They just know how to sell stuff. And a lot of time the master agent will actually even the vendor will install the whole thing. So this guy came from the master agent world. The third one we did, he was an Azure developer. And this was a guy who didn't even know anything about IoT, saw a presentation, thought, wait, I could sell that. And this was for a temperature control for a restaurant. Now, here's the little trick that I found. Okay, after doing, there's like 5 or 6 episodes published, but as you know, you get ahead, right? So
Right.
I'm about 7 episodes ahead. I can tell you after doing 12 episodes that there is a key to all this, and that is regulations. Regulations are your friend.
If somebody is being regulated, they don't have any choice. They got to buy something.
Correct. And so it turns out there are lots of regulations that the typical ChannelPro person wouldn't have even heard of or thought of. For example, every hospital healthcare deal that stores medical supplies, okay? So you buy from a pharmaceutical, you now have it in your pharmacy, in your doctor's office who might have, hey, you want a flu shot? Okay, all that stuff is regulated by multiple agencies.
Right.
Like that is JCO, the joint JCHA, there's a regulation around that. The FDA has a regulation, CDC has a regulation, and they all say you must store this within a 4-degree range with a certain humidity thing. And every 6 hours, somebody qualified needs to go to that refrigerator or whatever and record it in a temperature log and stick it in there. And so a lot of these places have RNs do this thing. So it's time consuming manually.
Like a log, like a piece of
Yeah.
paper.
So my devices make this plug and play solution, and I had them on a webinar, and that's it, a plug and play. You go in, all the sensors, it automatically generates that report for JCO. So zero, now there's 0 paper logs or anything. And they can show them literally down to the second what those temperature logs were,
Right.
all on their own, by the way, branded app. So if you meet the minimum sales, instead of having it branded as My Device, it'd be, Carl Palachuk LLC, right? I mean, you have your own logo on this app that you're selling to your clients. So super cool, the white labeled solution.
Very cool.
And
So I want to make sure people know the podcast address is podcast.iotplaybook.com.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
link in for that as well. So I'm now going to go subscribe and download all those podcasts.
Because I got to tell you, so the big, I think, eye opener, is, okay, so the regulations are a perfect way to get in. A lot of times we say, hey, do you have a niche, right? Because we know that in marketing, having that niche really does help. And of course, you and I have heard the same thing. Yeah, my niche is anybody that'll pay me, right?
Right.
But this actually allows you to come in with a really solid solution, and you'll distinguish yourself from 99% of everybody else, because how many other MSPs solving the temperature log problem, which is a real problem, okay?
Right.
But now you're on their network, and if you went in there and threw Domotes on there and discovers, oh, hey, you got a lot of devices out there.
And I think even in our industry, people don't realize how many devices are out there. You go to an office building and it's filled with cameras, and it's filled with temperature sensors, and it's filled with light bulbs that are all connected to the network. And so you've got, the obvious stuff, which is turning lights off, turning air conditioning off, saving money that way. Then you've got security, but compliance is another thing where I think we think of compliance more as security rather than all the other regulations. Right. Government has put into every aspect of everything.
That's right. I found out that any of the distribution chain that buys from a pharmaceutical, they're now subject to no less than 6 regulations, which one of them you're all familiar with, HIPAA, but right. Now there might be the California privacy thing that's coming up January 1, right? Well, anyway, there are other there's a new regulation coming January 1. Every hotel is going to have to install the one-button panic solution. Now, what does that look like?
Wow.
That means all the hotel workers will be wearing something like a life alert. If anything happens, like a hotel guest is too aggressive with a staff person, whatever, no language barrier, click a button, the entire security apparatus, infrastructure comes into play and, helps that person. Required now. It was a year or two ago, the hotel industry got together and voluntarily started to implement this. Then, as you know, all states go, oh, it needs to be mandatory. And by the way, the fines are $7,500 to $75,000 per infraction.
And so you need this device for every single employee at your hotel.
Yeah. Oh, and it's everything, by the way, everything I'm mentioning is all as a service, right? So you get to put this thing in once and you just get recurring revenue.
And that's the key to success.
Right.
It's always the recurring revenue component, because the device, you might make $1 times 1,200 employees. But then if you make $5 a month times 1,200 employees, well, that's a different story.
Yeah. So this Walter Sylvan guy in Denver, right? He's not an MSP. He's not technical. He literally sent the My Devices prepackaged deal under his own name, by the way, to this restaurant chain. They implemented it themselves, and he was on the phone, but they literally followed the instructions and did it themselves. He's at one support call in 6 months. And he could look up on his app and said, oh, it's a low battery. So he said, hey, could you change the battery in that sensor? Yep, done. That's it.
So he didn't even go on site.
No, he has never been, he never went on site. And so how did he get the gig? He happened to know the lawyer for the restaurant chain. And so for the lawyer, they said, oh yeah, my operations guy, yeah, we have to do all those temperature log things. And they're a pain in the butt. And so he talked to him. Literally, he put the package together, say a 30-day trial, for one restaurant. The guys did it and said, great. And then he rolled it out to all the whole chain. And since then, he's picked up hospitals. In fact, one that I'm particularly like, he now has done a brewery. That's a brewery restaurant deal. So next week, I think I'm going to do an on-site episode of IoT Playbook, because
You're in the brewery.
It's a craft brewery in Denver. So like, how could I pass up that?
Exactly.
Anyway, so I think one of the coolest ones coming up is an episode that will come out probably around, after this one. I'm not sure. But anyway, this guy, Taylor Clark, wrote me. He had done an episode with me, and he said, Mark, I just finished a project, and I got a complete hospital completely off the grid on wind power. And my first reaction was, no freaking way. Like, how? Because I'm imagining these giant windmills and, like the stuff you see in Palm Springs or whatever, lots of them that are not spinning.
Right.
In this episode, he shows everything, like literally his proposal, how the numbers work, how exactly this wind wall works. And I tell you, after that episode, I'm a total believer in this thing. Like, somebody is going to make a mint retrofitting. And by the way, the energy costs went down to 1/3. They literally wiped out 2/3 of their energy costs immediately. And of course, it's all sold as a service. So that's another key, is when you sell around a regulation, because California's got a regulation on, hey, you got to have a zero energy impact thing, whatever. It's going to affect every building. And as California goes, Carl,
right.
I'm blaming you, since as California regulations go, so goes the rest of the country.
So, my last real job before I went into consulting was in the mid 90s. And we took legislative information and put it online to track bills as they go through the state legislature, and got subscribers who were lobbyists and state agencies and so forth. Anyway, I used to go to a conference called the National Conference of State Legislators, NCSL. And so it's one body, but there's many of them, where these politicians and regulators get together and they talk about, what new programs of regulation are you putting in your state? Oh yeah, we should fine tune that. And what worked well and what didn't? Oh yeah, well, and they copy regulations from each other all the time. So it's not just California, but anything that's going on in any state, if you have success there, you are likely to have success in another state.
Right.
Because especially as we layer onto it concerns about privacy and whatever, like, is this camera pointing in the right direction? That's a perfect example, right? We want to point at license plates, not people's faces, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. And so I think the big idea is that, maybe this audience would go visit a new client. They go to the parking lot, they go in the room, and their eyeball will naturally pick up, laptop over here, and there's a screen there, and hey, maybe a Wi-Fi access control. Where's the server room? Shoot, that's gone now. And they look for that kind of stuff. But on IoTMSP, they're pulling up to the parking lot and immediately note, look at this light here. Look at this deal. Camera on the wall. Like, they're looking at the opportunity before they even hit the building and everything in the building. And so guys who really focus on this a while, like Lewis, he's getting asked to do things from clients he's had for a while that he never got. I mean, the core of the business, including an episode I just shot yesterday called The Smart Greenhouse. So he had ag clients all the time doing their normal MSP stuff. Now he's being asked to literally retrofit. This is a case study from Matsui, the largest orchid grower. And, each of these, they have, I think, 50 of these football field size greenhouses needs to become a smart greenhouse. They're going to save a ton of money, energy, and a lot of energy costs as well as personnel costs. And he's signing up ag clients, but not with their typical IT stuff. It's with their core business, but it's still all IT. If you see, we heard about intelligent edge and AI, and this smart greenhouse has all of it today, not the future, today, literally monitoring every second, the temperature and the humidity and whatever. And these new systems can literally dial an environment in and simulate anything. Like, I want to grow like this Italian a growing environment, whatever. You can literally, it's software. You literally program and it will control the entire greenhouse to
All right. So if you
simulate.
decide to grow Belgian endives, it knows how much water and what
And,
temperature and all that.
and as you can imagine, lots of people growing hemp for CBD, right? And not all hemp's equal. And they can say, "Oh, I want to grow this particular variety of one, and it has to do a certain thing because it will produce this super." I don't know if you ever bought CBD, but it's like, you know, $80 a drop. So,
Wow.
you know, it's so anyway, it just allows you to get into stuff that you didn't typically think you could do before. Allows you to really differentiate yourself, you know, from your competitors for sure.
Right.
And as it turns out, a lot of this IoT stuff, once it's set up correctly with the right platform, it has less. There's no patch management. I mean, there is, okay, because that's the one thing. I'm telling you the benefits of IoT managed services. Now, let me tell you the other side of ignoring the opportunity. I predict within 1 year that a big chunk of your audience will be sued by their clients because they got breached.
Oh.
And they'll get breached through their IoT. And they'll say, hey, it wasn't my thing. Okay, it's on your freaking network. You were supposed to look at it. You're handling my security, whether you,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I have long told people, whether you have somebody sign something or not, if you're managing the network, you are responsible. And they're going to go after you for the security.
Right.
And your client may never sue you, but their insurance company doesn't know you. Their insurance company doesn't care about you, and they will sue you.
Right. And so it's time to really, in fact, one of the things I've been looking into lately is a super MSP IoT friendly cybersecurity policy, which I think everyone in your audience should get, not only for themselves, but for their clients. The kind that will literally even pay fines, or, you know, if it's just easier to pay the ransomware for, you know, obviously you don't want to get ransomware, but, you know, if something bad were to happen, that they'll literally have a Bitcoin account, we'll just pay it off in 2 hours and you move on with life. So, yeah, I think we've entered in that world. And if you're not focused on the IoT security, you can't actually tell your clients that you've secured their network.
Right.
And I think once you use one of these new tools, you will discover, as the people who have run these, that more than half of their devices are IoT. And they've ignored them because, as you know, SolarWinds and the rest just have the sea of question marks. And I'm here to tell you that the people who've figured out what those question marks are making a lot of money on those question marks. They've turned those question marks into cash.
Here, because like you said, I mean, where we started out was we see these people up on stage saying, you can't ignore IoT, get into this, you're going to make a bunch of money. And then it's like, okay, draw the line between the dots, because I have been installing servers and laptops my entire life. Now the servers are gone. And what's all this, you know, all these cameras and stuff, you know?
You know, so we were talking about this cloud world. What's interesting with IoT, it's all, there's so much more coming back on-prem. It's so like,
we're moving back to a hardware environment.
We are, but it's very much this little, it's the data really is the king, because as this Azure guy found out, every one of his clients that put into My Devices, they get the standard reports, and they could do the standard, which are cool right out of the box. But then he would say, ooh, since you're collecting all this data, wouldn't it be neat if I could have a dashboard that added this and this and this? And so it's another upsell opportunity. He's creating custom dashboards for his clients by sucking that data into Azure, using the Azure tools to produce these beautiful, you know, reports. So I think it's going to open up a massive data opportunity for people. Yeah.
Right. Well, as the dude from Intel said, Brian, whose last name I can't ever pronounce, data is the new oil, right?
Right.
So that's it. As long as we get our fingers in the oil, we're good to go. So.
Yeah, and that's it. It's the data thing that you have to protect, and now there's just a whole lot more of it that you didn't even think about. You know, when every 6 seconds, you know, the plant, the orchid is sending off, hey, here's how moist I am, and here's the heat and the humidity inside this greenhouse, and like what, you know, and it's just jamming that data into this A server again. Servers are back. You can make money on hardware. Like this KMC Control sells this intelligent edge server that literally sits on-prem, so like, hey, it's coming back, baby. It's coming back your way. But if you don't know IoT, you get zero of it.
Right. Very cool. So websites again,
freeiotclass.com is a great place. Sign up. There's a great, it's like about a 1-hour presentation by Lewis and myself where he explains 3 IoT managed services that you could literally launch in the next 90 days. And then if you want to hear the podcast, go to podcast.iotplaybook.com. You'll see all the ones that have been published so far, and you can sign up and get notifications for that.
Very cool. Well, I wish you tremendous luck with that.
Hey,
and,
thank you.
And I am going to subscribe as soon as I get off this call.
Sounds good. Thanks a bunch,
Right.
Carl.
Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.
Yep. All right. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the SMB Community Podcast. If you found this useful, interesting, or fun, please subscribe, share with your friends, and give us a thumbs up on your favorite social media. Please check out the show notes at smbcommunitypodcast.com and give us your feedback.